The rain hadn't touched Miron's village in months. Cracks split his farmland like wounds. The corn had died in its stalks, the cattle thinned to ribs, and hope vanished like the morning mist. Miron Kadir, a once proud farmer in the dusty outskirts of Anatolia, now sat hunched in his crumbling stone hut, staring at the single sack of flour that stood between his family and starvation. His hands, blistered and scarred, trembled as he fed his sick mother the last spoonful of soup. Outside, the sky was choked in ash-colored clouds, but not a single drop would fall. He had mortgaged everything, even his dignity. So when the black car arrived late that evening, splashing dust over his broken boots, Miron didn't flinch. Two men stepped out, one in a dark suit, the other in a leather coat. City men, their shoes too clean for this place. The man in the suit handed Miron an envelope, thick with cash. "We need you to bury someone," he said flatly, his voice carrying the weight of danger. Miron blinked. "Who?" "She's already dead," said the other man. "No questions. Just dig. Tonight." And like that, they opened the trunk. Inside was a young woman wrapped in a silk sheet. She looked no older than 20. Pale, too pale. Not a scratch on her. Her lips slightly parted. Her hair still smelled of rosewater. Miron's heart skipped. Why not take her to the mosque? To the imam. The suited man scowled. "She has no name, no record. She's not meant to be found." He tapped the envelope. "Do it, or give that money back." Miron thought of his dying mother. His sister sleeping hungry. He clutched the envelope tighter. That night, under a bruised sky and the flicker of a dying lantern, Miron took his shovel and walked out to the edge of his dried land. He dug in silence. Each clump of dirt felt heavier than the last. He couldn't stop looking at her face. He laid her down carefully, whispering a prayer he could barely remember. And just as he raised the first shovel of earth, her fingers moved. Miron froze. The shovel clattered from his hand. Her lips parted again, this time not in death, but breath. She gasped. Eyes fluttered open, wild, terrified, confused. And then came a whisper. "Don't let them find me." Miron stumbled back, heart pounding in his throat. Was this a jinn? A spirit? Was he cursed now? But no, she was warm. Breathing. Alive. He dragged her from the grave and into his home, hiding her under blankets. He barely slept that night, sitting by her side with a shotgun in one hand and a prayer book in the other. When she finally stirred again the next morning, she spoke in a hoarse voice, eyes wide with fear. "They want me dead, please, don't send me back." She didn't remember her name. Or at least that's what she claimed. But she knew one thing, the men who brought her to Miron were not strangers. They had tried to kill her once. And they would come back. Miron didn't ask why. He just knew what he saw, a terrified girl, alone in a world that wanted her buried. So he made a decision that would change everything. He would protect her, no matter what, even if it meant risking his land, his family, his life. But secrets that are buried don't stay hidden forever. And someone was already watching. The morning sun filtered through the patched window, casting a golden glow over the cracked mud floor of Miron's cottage. The girl lay curled beneath a coarse blanket on the narrow cot, her face bruised by fear, her lips trembling with sleep. Miron sat slouched in the corner, shotgun across his knees, eyes swollen from a sleepless night. She stirred again. Her eyes opened slowly, studying the small room. There was a moment of silence between them, fragile and uncertain. Where am I?" she asked, voice barely audible. "You're safe," Miron replied, unsure if it was a lie. "They left. You're not in the ground. That's what matters." She blinked up at him. "You didn't bury me." "No," he said, "because you opened your eyes." Tears welled in hers. "Thank you." He shook his head. "Don't thank me. I was paid to bury you." Her throat tensed. She looked away. "I didn't know you were alive," he added quietly. "I swear on my mother." She looked at him again. "But you didn't finish the job." A long silence. Miron offered her water, which she drank like someone who hadn't tasted it in days. He watched her fingers, elegant but bruised. Her wrists bore red marks, and there was a thin scar behind her right ear, fresh and raw. "You remember your name yet?" he asked. She hesitated. Then, "Elif." It could have been the truth. Or not. But Miron nodded. "Elif," he repeated softly. Elif looked around. "Where are we?" "A village few hours from Van. Not even on most maps. No one comes here unless they're lost or desperate. "I guess I'm both," she whispered. Outside, the crows cawed. Elif spent the next few days hiding. Miran's mother, too ill to notice, slept in the next room. His younger sister, Halima, noticed the change in her brother's behavior, how he locked the doors more tightly, how he whispered to someone she never saw. But she never questioned him. She trusted him blindly. Miran brought Elif food when he could. Shared stories of his youth, before the droughts, before the debt collectors. Before he was forced to dig graves for strangers to keep the roof over his mother's head. One night, as the wind howled through the olive trees, Elif confessed the truth. "They work for a man named Zia, she said, her voice shaking. "He's rich, powerful. My father once did business with him, until he was betrayed. Zia took everything. My father died from the stress. My mother vanished." Miran frowned. "And you?" "I tried to expose him. I gathered documents, proof. I met with a journalist. Then, I was poisoned the night before the article was supposed to be published. I woke up, in that trunk." Her voice cracked. "I thought I was dead. Maybe I should have been." "No," Miran said firmly. "No one deserves that." She looked up at him. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied. "I know you're being hunted by powerful men. And that you were strong enough to survive being buried alive." They grew closer in the nights that followed. Something fragile and tender bloomed in that broken cottage. A touch of fingers. A stolen glance. Hope, reborn. But peace doesn't last where money speaks louder than conscience. 2 weeks later, the black car returned. It came silently in the night, headlights off, tires crunching gravel. Miran spotted it just as he was fetching water. He dropped the bucket and ran. "Elif, hide." She bolted into the crawl space beneath the floorboards, breath hitching. A loud knock at the door. Miran opened it, shotgun behind the frame. The suited man stood there again, only this time, he wasn't alone. Another man in a tailored gray coat stood beside him. His eyes were cold, calculating. Zia himself. "You didn't bury her," he said calmly. Miran's pulse pounded. "Not sure what you mean." Zia chuckled. "Don't insult my intelligence. We tracked her scent to your land. The grave was empty. You took her, farmer." "Even if I did," Miran said quietly, "I wouldn't give her back." "You think you can protect her?" Zia stepped forward. "You're nothing. You think a shotgun in a shack can stop me. I think you're afraid of what she knows." Zia's jaw tensed. "She dies, Miran, with or without your help. Don't be foolish." Behind the floorboards, Elif listened. Her heart pounded. She gripped the folder of documents she had stashed, copies of the evidence she had once risked everything to gather. Bank statements, offshore accounts, threats in writing, enough to burn Zia to the ground. But they had no way to get it out. No allies, no journalist anymore, unless, that night, Miran made a decision. They would run. By morning, they were gone. They crossed fields, hid in hay carts, hitched rides with farmers, and after 4 days, they reached the city. Istanbul. It was there that Elif found someone who would listen. A friend of the dead journalist, a woman named Sarah. She worked at a digital news outlet. Risky, underground, but brave. Sarah took one look at the documents and agreed to publish them. That night, Elif and Miran sat on the rooftop of a cheap hostel, watching the stars. "If this works," she whispered, "he'll be finished. And if it doesn't," she took his hand, "then at least we tried." He looked at her, the woman he was supposed to bury. The woman who had somehow buried herself into his heart instead. "I'd do it all again," he said. The next day, the article went viral. Within hours, the Turkish authorities launched an investigation. Zia's empire cracked, protests erupted, and for the first time, his name was no longer whispered with fear, but screamed in outrage. Miran and Elif remained in hiding for weeks, waiting. Until one morning, Sarah called with news. "He's been arrested." Elif wept. The kind of sob that carries years of fear, grief, and finally, justice. A year passed. The rains returned to Miran's village. The land healed. The people smiled again. And on a quiet spring morning, beneath the olive trees, Miran married Elif in a small ceremony with only Halima, his mother, and a few villagers present. No silk, no diamonds. Just wildflowers. And love. Miran still tilled the land, but no longer alone. Elif started a community school for girls. And every year, on the day she should have been buried, she lit a candle not for her death, but her second life. Because she was more than a girl who escaped a grave. She was a woman who refused to be silenced. And the farmer who once had nothing but a shovel, had buried his past and planted something far more powerful. Hope. If you haven't liked and subscribed yet, pause for a second. Because this chapter will test your heart and everything you thought you knew about Miran and Elif. We thought it ended with love. But sometimes, the real story begins after the happy ending. 2 years had passed since Zia Demir was sentenced. The documents Elif leaked had sparked national uproar. Whistleblowers came forward. A web of corruption was exposed. His empire collapsed. But power, once tasted, doesn't fade quietly. Miran and Elif had returned to the village, trying to build a quiet life. They replanted the fields, built a small school, raised goats. For a time, peace bloomed. Elif, now visibly radiant, stood barefoot among rows of wheat. Her hands cradled a gentle swell beneath her dress, a life growing inside her. But Miran was different now. He'd been watching the road too much. Sleeping too little. Speaking less. I keep thinking someone will come again, he admitted one night, brushing Elif's hair under the moonlight. They won't, she whispered. He's behind bars. But Miran wasn't afraid of Zia anymore. He was afraid of what he had done to protect Elif, of what he had buried, truly buried, when he saved her that night. There had been a third man in the car the night Zia first came. A silent one, eyes like stone, a witness. That man had returned a week after Zia's arrest. He had confronted Miran in secret, demanded payment, demanded silence, and Miran had done what he had sworn he'd never do again. He killed. In the darkness of a forest far from the village, Miran had buried him. No one knew, not even Elif, but sometimes silence grows louder with time. One day, a letter arrived. No stamp, no sender, just one sentence. Greater than, not all graves stay hidden. Elif saw the panic in Miran's eyes. He folded the letter, burned it in the stove. But she already knew something was wrong. Tell me, she pleaded. What did you do? I protected us. That's not an answer. I did what I had to, Elif. To keep you alive, to keep us safe. She stepped back, the pain in her eyes sharper than any blade. You buried someone for me. He nodded slowly. I never wanted you to know. Elif turned away, her hands trembling over her belly. And you think we can grow life on a grave like that? Miran fell silent. That night, she left. Not forever, but to think. She stayed with Sarah in Istanbul, unsure of what she wanted anymore. The baby grew. Her heart ached. She loved Miran. But she had promised herself, after escaping death, that she would never live with buried truths again. Months passed. Miran never wrote, but sent small packages, handmade baby shoes, stories carved on wood, dried flowers from the farm. His love was quiet, constant. When the baby was born, a daughter, they named her Sarah. Elif stared at the tiny, innocent eyes and knew. She didn't want her child to grow up in the shadow of a grave. So she returned, not with forgiveness, but with honesty. Miran, she said, holding their child, I'm not here to forget what you did. But I'm here to face it with you. I never wanted you to carry that weight. But I do. Because we chose each other. That means carrying everything, truth, grief, and joy. They walked to the edge of the forest together. Miran knelt at the spot where he'd buried the man. Tears fell. I'm not proud, he said. But I'd do it again, if it meant saving you. Elif touched his hand. Then let's stop hiding. From the past. From ourselves. From love. Together, they planted a tree over that grave. Not to forget, but to remember. To grow from it. To reclaim life. Years passed. The tree grew tall and strong. Sarah ran through the fields her father once plowed, laughter echoing across the land once marked by sorrow. Elif became a voice for victims, teaching girls how to speak before others tried to silence them. In Miran, he was no longer a man waiting for the past to return. He was a man who had dug 2 graves, one for death, one for truth, and had chosen life instead.